So hey there, how you doing? Thought I'd send you off a little video again. I'm playing around with my phone, so I thought I'd give it a little try. So I've got my headgear on and my little microphone, so hopefully it comes out okay. So that's the canvas we picked up at that thrift store. I don't know if you remember that. You probably do. So I've gone ahead and I've gessoed it, primed it. Now I did run that image through Google image search. I also checked the artist's name. I couldn't find anything on it, and so I just assumed that there was no value to it. So we're going to try and do something kind of cool with it. Maybe something a little bit of a motif of, thinking maybe horses, or I might do something related to, well, I haven't really given a lot of thought, so who knows what it'll end up being. This is my little art board that I built. So that's made out of pine. So up top I've got a little shelf for my old camera gear and storage of bits and pieces. And I built it a little bit like a old plaster wall. So if you look, I've just used the pine as slats. It allows me the ability to kind of bolt up or attach a canvas and work away at it without having to worry about doing anything in the regards to damaging a wall or overspray anything on that line. Down below I've got a little setup for a nice little shelf, and I use that for putting paint supplies and gear on as I'm working. Then below that, right now I've been a little overfilled with well, paintings and bits and pieces. So I kind of knew back in January that it'd be shutting down, so I went out and picked up some extra frames and some other little bits and pieces to keep me busy. Now down below I've got, well, I think you've probably seen this train before. I've done about 4 of them so far. Strangely enough, the image seems pretty popular. It's gone to Austria, which I think big train collectors in that neck of the woods, and predominantly they go to coffee shops. Don't know why, they seem to be very popular for decor with trains. And I've sent one off to China, which is kind of neat. So the one in China was done by 4 foot by 5 foot, so it was a big piece to ship. So I did it up on a piece of canvas, then rolled the canvas up after it dried after a couple days, and then shipped it out. They were very happy with it. They ended up getting it restretched and placed on a wall, which is kind of cool, along with their coffee shop logo down the side. So that was kind of a fun little thing to be involved with. Down below I've got my little decor paintings, which I go through an awful lot of the gold frames, and it's part of that little Russian print deal that I had where they didn't want to pay for the actual framework or anything along that line. They just wanted the prints. So that was part of an estate program. So that was kind of an interesting little sideline, which I thought was strange, but it worked out well. I got to experience shipping things out to Winnipeg, so I was almost borderline on whether or not just to drive out there with it. So I'm glad I shipped it because it would have taken some time, but I probably could have put it off a couple weeks, but maybe it wouldn't have, maybe the deal wouldn't have gone through. So I'm glad it closed up, got okay with that, did okay with that. Down below I've got some other little bits and pieces that I've done. These are decor pieces, so the bigger frames, these ones here. What I do is I've got a new home builder, and I'll do up a painting, or I'll do up a quick little, I wouldn't even call it a painting, just sometimes it's even just like 4 squares of colors for their decor. So they'll come up and say, hey, we've got a brown couch, we've got a red tub chair, and we've got an oak floor, and then I'll work around that to make the colors work within that room. And then I'll do up a series, and then I'll go hang them. And traditionally I charge out a rental fee for that. I don't actually bill them for the actual artwork. So it covers my time as far as doing the work is concerned, which is kind of nice. So it's almost like a paycheck. And then from there, every once in a while, I'll sell them. But usually they're not great pieces, so I don't see a lot of people actually lining up to get colored squares or things that match rooms. But it does happen occasionally. But by the time I do the rental fee out, and usually they'll hang on to them for 3 months, I've usually made my money back and my time. And then I end up getting a set of frames, and I get some prints, or I get some mats to work with. And usually what I find is the frame and the mat is usually expensive anyway, so if I can cover that cost before I move into my own, it just makes it easier, a little less stress on my end. That's the frame from the thrift store one that we picked up. So I've hung it on the wall as just a reminder to fill it. So again, I'm kind of getting it so that something that'll speak to the frame. So again, it's kind of got that rural or kind of rough look to it. So again, that's where I'm thinking something related to maybe some horses or, again, haven't really thought of that. So I'm still trying to work that out. So I've been doing the online, let's look at the pretty picture stuff, see if anything inspires me. And so far it hasn't. That's my little working desk, which of course is what I was using predominantly before I put up the wall. That's the one that I picked up out in Barrie. So I did a road trip for that one in particular. And it was formerly from the art school Hamilton. And what I liked about it was that behind it, if you take a look at the construction, you can see that there's this little red board here. Well, it's got a bunch of doodles and kind of little marks and signatures of past students. I thought it was kind of cool. I thought it was kind of a little inspirational. So I didn't want to kind of fuss with that and refinish it, so I put a new board, well, up-purposed the board. It's not new by any stretch of the imagination. I put it on top of it. But I just like it because if I'm using, well, good example, if I'm running a roller on it, or if I'm throwing paint, or if I got to cut something, I don't really care too much about it. So I can just go and get another piece of board or sand it back down and refinish it. So it's just it's a nice working surface I don't have to really be too concerned about. Down below, I put a little baseboard, a little edging there, which I kind of thought was neat. That's where I can lay pens, set the work. So if I want to do something along that line, it's pretty straightforward. And I picked up a little IKEA lamp, which I thought worked really well. Now, what I use the lamp for, which is kind of unusual, I clamp up a little camera to it, and I put it on a timer. So as I'm working, what it does is it captures an image about every 5 seconds. I don't have to pay any attention to it. I just let it go. Then I end up putting it up as an animated art piece as far as I'm painting. Strangely enough, if I do that in the link, when I go to advertise to sell it, it seems to make the work credible. So people look and go, oh, well, that's clearly handcrafted. It's not a digital piece and it's not a print. It seems to add a little additional value to it or confirmation that it's actually done, which is kind of fun. And up top, I got my little paint chart. So what that is essentially, let's say I take a break and I'm not sure what color I was working on. I'll mark down T or I'll mark down V, and it'll tell me that these are the formulas that I was using to mix the paint color. So kind of neat on that one. Another little group of, I guess, really ugly frames in my mind. But these are two pieces that go into or went into a bedroom, again, at a show home. Again, these have been paid for now, which is nice. So at some point I'll repurpose them. I might redo the actual frame, but now I've got a mat and a rather large frame that's pretty affordable to work with, so I don't have to worry too much about the costs involved with it. So it can be a little bit of an experiment. I'm actually thinking on this one I might do a kind of a pop series on it, and I'm thinking actually I might do like a rock and roll theme with it, because it's got a little bit of a rose to it. It's got a little bit of a gold flake, and I'm thinking it might lend itself to that as far as that's concerned. But I'm still kicking things around, so I'm not too sure what I'll do, but at some point I'll get some inspiration. On the little art table, which I thought was really cool, whoever had it last modified it, but it would have been modified a long time ago. And it was actually, the legs are designed to hold frames. So really cool little feature with it. So again, every time I go out to an estate sale or if I'm going to a thrift shop, I find the thrift shops to be a little bit limiting. They don't really have much there, so usually it's the estate sales that I end up going to. Sometimes at the estate sales, they go for some pretty good money, and other times nobody wants them. So it's just like a hit and miss. And sometimes I got to pick it up with a lot of things that I don't really want. So then I end up having to kind of do the retail arbitration thing and try and get rid of some other product in order to get these, or I'll trade them off with whoever I was bidding against. I'll say, look, I just wanted the frames, or I wanted the artwork. I have no interest in the quilts, or I have no interest in the pots and pans that came with it. And I'll end up getting those and then offsetting my cost. So usually I'm looking for things that have, well, a certain degree of quality to them, and or a good finish. The finish end of it, I don't really care that much, because if I get a nice wooden frame, like I've got a, here's a good example. Okay, so like these ones. So these ones are marked, right? So they got some scratches and scuffs on them. But I can pull them apart and I can sand them down, or I can take a little Brillo pad and just clean them up and then restain them. And then I've got essentially what looks like a brand new frame for a few dollars, opposed to going out to Michael's and spending, I don't know, 30 or 40 bucks on a frame and a mat. And then I've got to get another 75 or 150 for the work that I've put into it. So then you look at that, you kind of go, well, if I can save on the frame, I can offset the cost by, instead of having to get the full pop all the time or worry about presentation, I can actually pull the print out and say, hey, it's either you spend the extra 50 or 60 bucks on the frame, or you just buy the print itself. And that seems to work out well for me. Down below is a little spot for paint storage, which I kind of like. It's a tray that I'm going to be mounting to here shortly. So again, it's a modification I've come up with. In back, let's see, I've got my little compressor there, which is kind of neat. So this is the thing that I drag out, throw in the back of the PT Cruiser. Weighs a ton. And if I'm going to go out to do a mural, or I'm going to do a wall, that's what I take out. Up top, I've got my other little area of frames, and these are kind of the 16 by 12 or the 10 by 11 stuff. So it's things that I pick up at Walmart, which would be a good example of these ones here. So Walmart once a year will do a end of season or a large sale on it, kind of quietly. They put them in the back 40 there. So these ones were, I think, $6.50. So they were about 80% off. So they were below the cost of actually buying anything wholesale. So whenever these things come up at the local Walmart, I pick them up. And this is the remainder. I think I picked up 25 of these for $6 a piece. So that was a pretty good deal on those. And I did another one that was just it's kind of an ugly gold color, which I kind of understood why nobody bought them. And I just ended up spraying them out black. And I added 15 of those as well, again at about $6 a piece. So usually those things I end up doing are quick, little, I guess, 10 by 12s, real fast. Usually they're done up with an acrylic. Usually it's kind of, how to describe it, either they're just, I wouldn't describe them as disposable pieces, but I don't get a lot for them. But I get more when they're actually in a painting. So, like, I mean in a frame. So it moves it up from maybe that $25 to $35 a piece. Now I'm getting 75, or sometimes if it's a bidding process, and sometimes I'll use the sites for that, it'll move up depending on if it's something that would be considered a bit of a collectible. And I don't mean by the age, I mean by the actual genre it's in. So in other words, something that'd be hard to come by. Good example would be my Volkswagen stuff. If you're a Volkswagen collector and you've got a Type 2, and you're looking for Type 2 stuff to put in the garage or to put in the den, well then you're going to pay a little more for that because that's what you're looking for. And it's weird because sometimes it's something that I think is going to be pointless and doesn't make any sense, or it's just a generic piece. Like I've done a couple 911s just because I like them, and I'll put them up, and either they'll go for kind of my base price, or they'll end up getting bid up to the point where you kind of go, okay, that guy has a yellow 911, he's got a 73, or someone in the family does, and that's why they paid a little more for it. Down below, I've got my little IKEA finds. So whenever I do the IKEA trip, I pick up these black frames with a standard mat to them. Usually I end up picking them up when they're in the as-is section. So when they tear down one of the displays, and they'll have their artwork up, all that stuff ends up down at the as-is area, and they'll go for sometimes 75% off. So you're taking something that would normally be about $35 or $20 on retail, and you're paying in the neighborhood of $5 to $10 for them. So every time I go, and if they're there, I just snatch them all up because good value to them. Now sometimes they'll leave their print in it, which is kind of funny. So if I pull the print out and I don't want to have it, I'll post it up on Kijiji as a print only, no frame. And sometimes I'll get $5 to $10 just on that piece alone, and they're relatively easy to ship out. And again, they're a known commodity. So when you put IKEA, blah, 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 time, date, this is what it is. Sometimes someone's just trying to fill in a collection of whatever they've got at home, and they seem to move pretty quick. And they're usually around the 20 or 30 bucks at the store level anyway, so it's a nice little exercise there. Down below here, I've got my little art cart, which I think these are the paints you gave me. Actually, no, this is from an art kit that I picked up from, where was that from? It's an art supply store in Markham. And what they did is they sold these as with an easel and a bunch of other little things. And they were like $19.95 for the really crappy easel and kind of horrible brushes. But the paints themselves were worth like $2 a piece in the actual store. So I thought to myself, well, it's cheaper just to buy the entire kit and then throw out or just repurpose everything else. I also do up the dollar store acrylics. They probably look familiar to you. The reason I do that is, number one, they're cheap, and I don't have to be too concerned about how much I use. And they mix well, and they seem to stay stable. Whereas the ones that I pick up from Michael's, they're usually about $5 or $6 for these. And I find that they're past date. They don't move them fast enough. Whereas if I get the ones from the dollar store, there's no grit and there's no loss of pigment, or just they feel better, which is strange. And I've got a pretty good collection, so I've managed to piece together just about every color that the dollar store had or has. So you kind of get an idea there. So that's kind of nice. So if I get an inspiration in the middle of the night, I don't have to go hunting for paint work, which is kind of a nice little feature there. So predominantly I do the acrylic stuff. I've been doing some watercolors as well, but I find I'm not set up for watercolors. So I have to use a desk, or kind of have to pull them all out. And you kind of get into a flow with something after a while. And I like to get into watercolors. It's just that one of those things that just takes time. Again, another one of my little frame finds, and I ended up doing this one as I don't even know why I did it. But I saw an image online. I thought, okay, well, I can copy that. So I did. I'll probably end up placing it. I've got 2 bids on it now, which is kind of weird. And it's not normally what I do, but I just thought, okay, let's give it a try and play around with it. This isn't an acrylic. This is a mix of pastels. And the reason I did that is because the actual frame, because it's got these 2 pieces to it, is actually countersunk. So it's almost as if the frame was designed to do a pastel. So that's why I did that one. Again, I was just playing around. Again, not acrylic, but I thought I'd give it a shot. It's got this kind of really neat little fabric piece to it as well. And the frame looks really kind of goofy. And when I saw it, I thought to myself, geez, that looks really cheap. But then I started looking at it. It's not made out of plastic. Someone actually took the time to actually build this thing. So I don't know why they did it or what the reasoning for, but they did spend a lot of time on the actual frame, which is why I ended up picking it up and using it. It was one of those little quirky little things, because I thought, oh, it's just a cheap piece, but it's actually a nice little item. So that's about all I've been up to. Hope you've been staying busy. This is my little tour of my little, I guess, 10 by 8, well, actually probably 10 by 12 room now, of my space. So again, hope you're not going insane. Talk to you later.